Scott, appreciate you being here today. There's a lot to talk about. I guess we can bring up something, and I just brought this up a little while ago. I saw Chrystia Freeland's post today on social media outlining some new plans, something I'd never heard about, with respect to Canada's defense. So let's jump in with that. What did you make of that?
Yeah, there's a bit of a foot race on all of a sudden among folks in terms of how quickly can Canada get to the 2% commitment for NATO. So you saw the Prime Minister commit to 2032, I think it was. Bill Blair, the Defense Minister, said, well, I'd really like to see us get there even quicker. The other day, Mark Carney, obviously leadership candidate, said 2030. Now Karina Gold and Chrystia Freeland are saying 2027. I'm going to be honest with you. This does not matter. This does not matter. It's an important issue. It's important in its own right. It's important in the context of our ongoing challenges with Donald Trump because he's made it an element of his discussions around tariffs. But, you know, Karina Gold said she's going to do it in 2027, really, versus like 2030. This is not going to sway the leadership. Mark Carney's clearly in command of the leadership. He's going to be the guy that probably wins and is the next prime minister. And really the question isn't going to be about 2%, but whether Donald Trump is going to impose even more conditions. And, you know, he's already mused about 2% is inadequate. It should be 5%.
Yeah. Then again, even if we go ahead and kind of, satisfy his whim that particular day, we're not cutting a check for $5 billion for 5% or the equivalent of it. We'd be pledging to do that, would we not?
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, there's kind of this mad rush of, we absolutely need to do that going on now among people. But at some point, people will pause and say, how many tens of billions per annum each year is this costing us as compared to other relative priorities? There's a reason that Liberal and Conservative prime ministers for the past 50 years have not met this standard. Now, I do think there's momentum and consensus on it, but this idea of like 2027 isn't enough, let's do it in 2024. Oh, wait, that's already passed. It's getting a little absurd.
By the way, with respect, and I think I heard Pierre Poilievre mention this yesterday when he was going on about fentanyl and mandatory life sentences and whatever, suggesting that the Liberals are being pulled in, if you will, to Donald Trump's, gravitational pull, and then talking about the idea of a fentanyl czar being sort of performative. What do you think about this? I mean, it seems to me the Liberals, at least, as the party stands now, kind of are really between a rock and a hard place. You don't want to go and sort of go up against Donald Trump. You didn't have to go through with the retaliatory tariffs. Are we doing this the right way or not, as far as you're concerned?
Well, there are no good options. And it would be rich of Pierre Poilievre to suggest that this is a challenge that only confronts the Liberals. I mean, in all likelihood, he will be, according to polls, the next prime minister. And we've seen him move his campaign from an axe attacks, build the houses, yada, yada, yada focus to later days talking about Canada first, and himself had a detailed 5-6-point plan on how to respond to Donald Trump, which, by the way, isn't a whole hell of a lot different than the federal government's and Mark Carney. So everyone suddenly is kind of hugging the same clutch of issues, the same set of priorities, and, that certainly includes the current government, and that's because we are trapped, whether we like it or not, in Donald Trump's gravitational field. He's the president of the United States. He's decided that he is going to break all the norms and rules and obligations that have, guided our friendship and partnership for the past 30, 40, 50 years. Like, the reality is we can't count on America the way that we could before. They're no longer an insurance policy, and so far as economically, we know we're going to have unfettered access to their market. So we're going to have to be forced to look at alternatives, to build in contingencies, and that's true whether we have a conservative prime minister or a liberal prime minister. And I'll tell you one more thing about fentanyl and lifetime sentences. It ain't going to pass the courts. It will be struck down. When I was in government, when Mr. Martin was prime minister, we put in a whole series of mandatory minimums, and half of them got tossed out by the courts. So, talk is cheap.
Which, again, begs the question, because that's something that came out fairly quickly after Pierre Poilievre brought this up yesterday. What is the point of going ahead and making a big show about all this when we know that it would be unconstitutional and would get tossed by the courts? So why bother with this in the first place?
You got to put that question to the likes of Pierre Poilievre. But I think his answer would be he doesn't care. He wants to signal what his priorities would be and what his specific policies and approach would be. And, he would look you in the eye and say, yeah, well, maybe it's time we started kicking the courts around. which, I don't know, maybe people would applaud on this issue of mandatory minimums, but it does take you further down this road of, well, isn't that what they're doing in the United States? Haven't they politicized their courts? Haven't they suddenly made their courts a whim of elected political leaders? And now, you feel like maybe people don't even have that recourse available to them. You get a mad king as president, and you can't be sure that the courts will overturn policies that are unjust or discriminatory.
And is that where we want to be? All right, I want to get to this other point that really kind of sent everyone's heads moving the other way the other day when Donald Trump brought up the whole issue of turning, the Gaza Strip into the next Riviera of the Middle East. With respect to the reaction we have seen to this, Scott, from and I think it's been fairly uniform across the globe, telling him you can't do this is crazy, this is going to cause even more trouble than there. So I'm reading today that Israel's defense minister already posted on social media on X, he'd instructed Israel's military to draft a plan to evacuate any resident of Gaza who wishes to leave to be willing to be resettled in a different country abroad. I thought this would, start and end the same day it came out because the White House walked this back literally the next day. Has Canada sort of come out and said anything on this? I had not heard.
Yes, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly has basically signaled that this idea is cockamamie, and talked about the integrity of our immigration system, talked about our traditional approach two-state solution in the Middle East. Look, this is happening. You're seeing this move by the Israeli defense minister for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, it's another example. It's an extension of what we were just talking about a minute ago. Donald Trump's gravitational field. He is all-powerful right now. He is flush with the election victory. And, he throws in an idea like this, was as absurd on the face of it. It's absurd and insulting. It's as insulting to Israel as it is to Palestinians. But the idea that the Israelis are going along with it, well, it's because, of course, Israelis would love to see the Gaza Strip emptied of Palestinians and certainly Hamas terrorists. So, you can have two opinions at once about this if you're in Israel and if you're the Israeli defense minister. You can think this is a ridiculous idea that won't ever happen, and you can also think that it would be nice if it did. As for Canada's role, the idea that we would, with open arms, say, sure, come on in here, when we don't know and we can't be certain exactly who's coming in. Donald Trump complains about the northern border and our immigration policy as perhaps being a mechanism that could permit foreign terrorists to come in and use that as a gateway into the United States. Now he's inviting it, like Hamas, Hezbollah. No, thanks. No, thanks. Ridiculous.
Scott Reid, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.